Hello, well done. You've washed your face and you've had a cup of tea. What a good idea. I have to say, you were really unlucky in that lesson. You weren't to know that there was going to be a fight just beforehand and that you were going to have endless interruptions as various students were pulled out for questioning about that incident. And it was such a shame because I know how hard you'd worked on that. And I can see and understand why you're angry and frustrated. I would feel exactly the same way. However, you managed to pull them round. Now that's difficult under those circumstances. They were very, very preoccupied with what had happened. They were anxious, they were a bit excited, and really weren't ready for a drama lesson in the way they normally were. So we were all caught on the hop rather with that situation. And I did wonder whether you'd make it. There were a few points where I nearly stepped in, but actually didn't have to. So I know you're feeling disappointed, but actually there were lots and lots of good things about what you did in that lesson. Oh, yes. Yeah. You need to feel pleased with yourself, really. You do. So let's go through it. You've got the room beautifully set up for that court case. And although you stood at the door at the usual, as you usually do, they were coming in very, very differently. Yeah. And didn't really settle quietly for register the way they usually did. There was lots of messing about with bags and chatting, and I think maybe about 10 students actually sat down in the circle where they normally would do it. So at that point, I saw your face and I wondered what you were actually thinking at that point. So, yes, tell me a little bit about that moment. You did try to settle them. Yeah, that was an uphill struggle. You're right. Yeah, you kept asking for quiet. Yes, I wondered if you'd make them line up again outside and start again. I think that might have been a good idea. But of course, they were already late. You're right. And you were looking at the time. So you tried to plough on and calm them once they were in the space. Do you remember what you did? Yes, yes, good. You were looking at that quiet, biddable group that were doing what you asked them to do, and then you started putting them in those key seats which had got the names of the characters on. And that drew attention. It did. That worked very well, apart from that last group that was still preoccupied. But most of the class at that point were with you at that point and were starting to engage. Not brilliantly, but they were more with you than against you at that moment. So that was good. I thought that was a very clever strategy. Well done. And then what happened? Yeah. That's right. You decided to work with the class that was with you and tactically ignore that other group, which under the circumstances was probably the right thing to do. Yeah, you were hoping that they would join in eventually, which they did actually, probably a bit later than you would hope, but they did do that. Yeah, it was a clever move again. And you decided to plough on. Yeah, I saw you looking at the clock. I did feel for you at that moment, but you were winning. You really were at that point. So we're now down to two who were not engaged at all and who were really messing about, and not with you at all, and beginning to be a bit of a distraction for the others. Yes, that's right. Yep, you separated them and you wished you'd done that earlier. Yes, you could have done that earlier. That might have been a good idea. You nearly got dragged into an argument, and I've seen you fall into that trap before, but you weren't having it this time. You just ignored it, and they fell into line, and you had them working in those two separate groups. It was bad luck that both of those groups then got disrupted by being pulled out for questioning, and that upset things again for a little while. So tell me what was going through your mind then. Yes, you yo-yoed between the two groups, keeping on top of them. Yeah, the other groups were working. Yes, you're right. It would have been nice if you'd had a little bit more time with them, but you did actually get those two groups settled and focused. And then we had sharing and showing at the end. Now, obviously, there wasn't enough time for everybody to share and show. You're right. The work was not developed enough to share and show. That would have been a downward dip for the end of the lesson. I thought you were very, very good to come off plan there and do the spotlighting instead. And they could all do something for a few seconds. And that last bit was really lovely, where you worked with the group that had got really lovely work to show and then did some very simple questioning at the end. I'm so glad you didn't try a complicated plenary. I don't think anybody could have coped with that. So you did, of all the things you could have done, you did them all. You're now wondering whether you did them in the right order, and maybe you're right. Maybe you could have done some things sooner, which may have worked better. It's very difficult to say. But actually, you had handled a very difficult situation today and got them on side and got some work done. So well done. Well done.